Daniel. I originally come from the Czech Republic. In case you haven't ever heard anything of this country, this is the country with the highest per capita beer consumption worldwide. That's also the most important thing you need to know. I left Czech Republic 2011 to work in Germany for a company called 1&1, where I currently lead the application security team. So we have roughly 30 development teams to develop cloud applications, especially for the European customers.
Thank you. Hi, my name is René. I'm working for Ascript, which is a subsidiary of Bosch. Maybe you've heard Bosch. Ascript, a big tool company, green logo. I'm in application security since 7.5 years. I've worked together with Daniel as 1&1 for 5.5 years, and 2 years ago I decided to leave the company and now working for Ascript. I'm therefore involved in the application security team and everything regarding application security.
Today we are going to talk about OWASP project, which we started a couple of years back. But first, I would like to talk about the reasons which drove us to develop the projects. Besides wanting to have a toy, we also had objective reasons. And one of the things we were dealing with was fast pace. So it feels like nowadays everything is about time to market. Everyone is pretty fast. So developers actually do not have too much time for security. So some years back, when we started with SDLC and so on, we started with Excel tables. When we threw the Excel table at developers, they were not exactly happy, and especially as the Excel table caused like doing some Jira tasks and so on. So that was not, let's say, the most favorite action in the dev teams. And the same things go for the AppSec teams, as especially once you're guiding more teams, you will find yourself in a situation where every team uses different technologies, different things. You will never manage to know them all in a decent level of detail. You are also asked to deliver fast. So basically, you need to automate as much as you can in order to make sure that you're using the resources in an efficient way. Next thing we were struggling with was documentation. One of the things we do for the teams are also architecture reviews, threat models, etc. And it feels like with the Agile Manifesto, which says something like shall present code and not the documentation, a lot of teams understood it in a way that they don't have to write documentation anymore. So maybe you could even forget to the word security, just having documentation as an issue. But once you're asked to do architecture review, and you almost never find in the documentation things like, okay, do you validate your input? If you do, using which libraries? Are those consistent? How did you choose them? So, Next thing also AppSec is very often struggling with is that kind of a lot of AppSec people still believe on the waterfall approach, and the dev teams do not that much. So if you Google for SDLC, you will find many development technologies, but most of them are based on waterfall, whether it be Microsoft SDL or whichever similar methodology. So that's why, again, having 30 teams, they feels like they use everything from DevOps, Agile, Kanban, Scrum, whatever, custom, however you name it. They change it after every second retrospective. So that's why we kind of needed interface with the team. So actually, what the security is about is the artifact, and nevertheless, how you develop it, in which methodology, basically the deliverable is what the decides and what you need to secure. So that's why we regard, say, security on the artifact level rather than on project level, besides like really big initiatives and projects. What is also often an issue is that one day you tell development team that the best practice is to use certain libraries, certain crypto algorithms, certain browser security headers, and these things change continuously, right? So every now and then you have new security headers, new algorithms, the cipher lengths differ, and it's kind of difficult for the teams to find out actually when a new security requirement comes. So are they already compliant or not? So also another example I think which you might also be impacted was the GDPR standard, where what we did, one of the things for GDPR was that we sat with our privacy team a lot, and basically no company starts from zero, right? So GDPR talks a lot about security. There are a lot of common intensives. So you'll find, okay, like 80% of the things you need to do is already maybe covered by your security program. But what those 80% are, and more importantly, what is the gap? What is the 20%? And how to find it? So yeah, this was also kind of shift for our development teams, where we needed to convince them that security actually develops and also is supposed to develop in exactly the agile way as they do. Also, one thing what we were struggling with was external development. So as I said, we have something like 30 development teams in 3 locations, but we still use also external development companies to deliver some products. So customer comes to us, starts working on an application, and basically he or she doesn't know whether it's an application which was developed internally or externally. It might even have access to the same kind of data, and you can do a pretty good job on securing or setting your internal secure processes for your development. But we are still struggling with the external ones, because we had cases where just the business said, okay, we need certain applications, certain features. So we don't have internal resources, so we will ask some external company to deliver that one. Then sometime later, we also have bug bounty programs. So a customer, for instance, reported an issue. We found out, okay, it was an issue developed by external company, and so we went to that company and say, okay, we have this issue, we need to fix it. And they said, yeah, that's nice, but like security, we never agreed on any security level. You wanted us to deliver certain features, there are no SLAs, the delivery is done for years, our people are on different projects, so we would love to help you, but we cannot. And we are pretty sorry, and we might help you in 2 months, and it will cost something. So there's also a situation which you don't exactly want being if you do this. So we kind of wanted to standardize this. Nevertheless, who develops the application? The applications are always supposed to be developed according to the same standards. Yeah, that's why we came with this tool, SecurityRAT. RAT being not a big mouse, but a requirement automation tool. And how it works from principle is that you, as a developer or security champion or whoever in your team, you come to the tool and you tell what are you going to develop. So what's the criticality of the application, what's the type of the application, so is it a mobile app developed in Android, is it web service developed in Java, whatever. The tool gives you certain amount of security requirements, and you decide how are you going to handle that. So of course, normally you want to be compliant with as many requirements as you can, but sometimes you had a legitimate reason for not going for all of them, so you also want to document that, especially again if you're in the development team, also for your colleagues, because once you the decision that you will not do logging or not do something some application, you don't want people asking over and over, are we supposed to do that? Once you defined how the application should look like, you need to persist this information somewhere. Again, when we used to have the Excel table, we ended up with like 50 versions of that Excel file in many postboxes, and no one knew which one is the correct one. So what we did is we created a special Jira queue where we don't have tasks, but we have there basically software artifacts. So it's kind of abuse of Jira as an asset management system. And the point where it started to be interesting for our dev teams was that when we had the Excel tables, when the dev teams found out that many requirements from the Excel generate tickets in their Jira queue. The bad thing about Excel, it doesn't generate the tickets for them, so they need to manually copy and paste the requirement one by one to their queue. So again, if you have Jira integration, you are simply able to create those tickets in a batch mode. So for instance, tell me, okay, give me all the tickets which I marked as a task and generate it as a ticket and cover those in your normal development workflows. Maybe one important thing to say, what we are focusing with the whole SecurityRAT tool is the automation of the procedures rather than the requirements themselves. So I think we're going to current standards because it's our focus. So what the tool is more about is, let's say, delivering a framework for automating these things in your development. Yeah, how we use it. Meanwhile, it's not negotiable for our software development teams. When they create a Git repository, they are simply expected to work with the tool and to define the security of their app, because simply it is the cheapest option. So it's the most efficient way how you can address these topics is before you should start developing is to define the rules according to which you'll be developing. Nevertheless, you don't only have the new artifacts, right? So your software artifacts live 5, maybe even 10 years. Sometimes, so for the more critical artifacts, we also started to perform, let's call it gap analysis. Nevertheless, what we found out is that these gap analyses are crazy expensive, because once you have some code, and maybe to that code you don't even have the people in the company which developed one. So, and then when you are trying to find out, okay, according to which rules this application logs, according to which rules this application inputs, validates inputs and so on. It's a crazy amount of work. So there was also for us a motivation what helped to push these activities left. Where we said, okay, this is simply the most efficient way which we can do it. Yeah, and now René will give you an idea how this works.
Exactly, so it's time for a demo. So now we have to figure out how can I you hold the micro, use the keyboard, and have a look at the screen. So, okay. Let's start with SecurityRAT first. Okay, Daniel's holding for me the mic, which makes it much easier. Just walking to our Jira queue. So what you see here is actually SecurityRAT. This is the main page of SecurityRAT. And this is currently with the OWASP ASVA's requirements in the database. I hope you're all familiar with OWASP ASVA's, the Application Security Verification Standard. And we also open sourced the requirement set. The ASVS is also in our repository. So first of all, what Daniel mentioned for us, everything is an artifact. So what you should do now is you should define your artifact and somehow regarding the parameters it gets selected. So let's just give it a name. Let's say this is a web app toolbar. And first of all, those parameters you see here, those are freely configurable. This is just an example. You can configure whatever you like here, artifact type, you can call it whatever you like, session, everything is freely configurable at SecurityRAT. This is just an example of what kind of parameters you could add to ASVS, but you can also add your own custom parameter. So for the level, let's start with the level 1 opportunistic from ASVS. Let's say we want to develop a front-end application. The authentication part, I would say we go for a single sign-on client, so the front-end application relies for the authentication part on a single sign-on client rather than implementing its own authentication schema. So for session management, it uses session IDs, something like Java session IDs, and reachability. Let's select externally. Actually means the application is reachable from the internet. It's not an internal application, which is only reachable from the internal network, which of course you should have more security requirements in place instead of one only hosted internally. So just hit an implementation type. This is rather use case specific. And when I hit now generate, what it will do is the tool will look into the database and looking up all the requirements which are going to match those specific parameters I gave it. So the whole ASVS standard usually contains 180 requirements. So instead of giving your developers a list of 180 requirements and tell them, here you are, those are your security requirements, please figure it out by yourself. They're fun, by the way. You can go to them and tell them, look, now only we have 59 requirements you have to take care of. And with 59 requirements, the developers will usually say, yeah, okay, I think we can handle that. Of course, not all requirements might affect one guy in the team. If this is split it up with back-end and front-end, this is also different. So what we usually do now in our project is we sit together with the development team, the architect, the project manager, and us, or the security manager, and we go to each requirement here and give it a status if it's fulfilled or not. Again, also these columns, what you see here, common, fulfilled, more information. This is only free configurable. You can add whatever column you like in SecurityRAT, and you can add whatever you like as values for drop-downs. This is just an example of the database we present here. So I usually go with these kind of drop-downs to tell them, okay, do they understand the requirement? If yes, do they have fulfilled it, or no, partly, because they're not sure, or clarify they're completely not sure if they are compliant with this requirement. So you go usually to each of these requirements and write there some kind of documentation. Yes, we do that. Usually you should also write in here how they actually do it, because it's your documentation in the end. But for the example, I just type in here yes. And let's say, for example, they say, no, we do not fulfill this one because this needs to be done. And we also do not fulfill this one because it also needs to be done. So you get the idea how you go through each requirement. So now you have it filled out, and now you need to persist it somehow, somewhere. So what we are currently using is Jira as a persistence queue. I have to look up the project. I've set it down here. Let's go for the after. Create a ticket inside that queue for you. So we are going here with the queue, hit export. What it will now do, it will ask the Jira API, so what kind of settings does this queue have? For example, what kind of issue types are linked to this queue? So I created an issue type artifact. So for me it's more convenient to have all artifacts in an issue type artifact. And then I can also configure, if I want, additional fields like assignee, due date, whatever you can imagine, and can set this also directly to a person and assign this. So just hit export, and it will now create the ticket, hopefully. Yeah, thank you. And we can have a look at this ticket. And what we see now, this is actually our artifact ticket. So what we here have is, we have some comments that a new artifact was created with a link to SecurityRAT with an automatic import, and we have a new attachment. So what we are doing is, every time something is changing in the artifact, for example, if I change something in SecurityRAT, I will show later, we will add a new attachment. It's basically a YAML file containing all the security requirements in the comments. I will show that also. But now, let's, for the demo, say, okay, we have created our artifact and we went through each requirement. Let's filter for the ones where the development team said they did not do this. This is something they need to do. So those are the actually now tasks you need to assign to your developers, operations guys, whatever. So what you can do now is just select them all, and again hit create JIRA tickets. So and instead of pushing it to my artifact queue, I have another queue, agile dev. This is my it's my queue for the developers, agile dev. So what I will do now is create the tickets. It asks me again. Here you see now, as you can see, the issue types are different. So we're really asking the JIRA API what kind of issue types are linked to this queue. So let's assume those are tasks. We can also add custom labels for better filtering and hit create tickets. And we have an error. This is usually the demo god. I did this an hour before and it worked. Love that. Yeah, it got linked, but not in the ticket, in the SecurityRAT, how I would like to show it. So let's create another one. Save. Out. Again. What you see now is, so it has created now two tickets in the dev queue. So if we have a look in the artifact ticket again, which is now this one, we also see that the relation to the agile tickets is also mapped directly into the ticket. So you see directly, okay, we see those are currently on to do. Let's hit on one of the tickets, go to the developer tickets, and for example say, okay, the developer took care of it and said this is now done. So this is the status, and for the other, let's say he said, okay, this is in progress, I need some kind of time to review that. So if we go back now, we have directly a link where we can import to SecurityRAT from this ticket again, or yeah, let's do it that way. Just clicking the link, it will import directly from that ticket, so there's nothing to do for us. And what we see now, of course I did not hit any comments in here in that new one. If I would have added comments, you will also see it here, but you can now see also the status directly of the ticket. So you see if your developer took care of something or not, and can now start your review process of your requirements. Yeah, and those are directly marked. And what Daniel also mentioned is, how about the agile teams? As you mentioned, security requirements, they're going to change over time. So for example, we are responsible for defining the security requirements in our company. So how about that? I will now go to in RAT into the admin interface, where I actually have a CRAT interface for the security requirements. And let's assume I'm going to change just one requirement, for example, here. So let's go directly with the first one, and instead of FUBA, yeah, whatever words, I just hit it, some kind of edit, modified it somehow. You can either modify a security requirement, add new ones, or delete ones, and you will see it. If I'm going back to the ticket, that was ART6, right? The last ticket I used. So if I'm going back to ART6 and import again, you should now see something. If it's imported, yeah. So it's imported, and you see on the right corner a new button popped up, updates available. So during each import, we will have a look into the backend
if the current requirement set has somehow changed from the central department. So if there are any updates, either modification, new requirements mapping directly to those parameters, or deleted somehow because of the security department said, okay, this is not useful anymore. So if I hit updates available, so what it will show me now, okay, one requirement was updates was found, now new requirements were found, and now were removed. So now I have the choice to either also accept those changes. We highlight the changes inside each ticket, and we can say, okay, I'm going to accept this change, or I'm going to decline this change. If I hit accept, it will be automatically mapped into my current requirement set, and I have the new requirement inside here, and again, it's just hitting save. This is my artifact queue. All the updates are also persisted in the artifact ticket directly. So I just want to show you about how we're going to have revision history. As you see, here are now 3 attachments. So that there are changes, because I've made changes like this update at the moment, or created the tickets for the developers. This is also a change in the requirements section. So we also have this link here without directly importing an attachment. Instead, we are just giving the importer a Jira ticket. And what we see now is we can select which kind of attachment file we want to import. So we have version history of like what has changed in that artifact ticket. So for example, if the developers have changed saying, okay, we fulfilled this requirement or not, you can always jump back in the revision history and have a look what they have changed or not. Yeah, basically this was then, it's just saying, I think this one was used. And there reporting again, and we see the current set panel, which was used 1.1. So, and with that, I think Daniel, I hand over to you again, because Daniel is now going to show you some news, what we've currently developed in the last year. But I think I closed the slides for you. No. Thank you. Let me open that for you here. Yeah, forward.
Yeah. So with this step, what we did as a first, we found okay, we achieved quite some difference in the awareness of the dev teams. They started to implement those requirements. Nevertheless, we also kind of shot ourselves in the knee, because we had now 30 teams which said, okay, I think I implemented it, but could you please check it for me pretty quickly. So they kept coming to us as a boomerang with, like, let's say, even more work. So we had the idea, okay, so what if we were able to offer the dev teams a way how to test those requirements, at least to a certain degree of confidence, in an automated way. So rather than using like the generic testing tools like BERT, CEP, Arachne, whatever you like, what the dev teams are more interested in, okay, have I met my definition of done? That's usually what they are interested for. So we created a thesis for that, and basically what we managed to come up with was another tool called SecurityRAT. Cat, like not a small tiger, but compliance automation tool. And how it works is that this has basically a REST API, and when the SecurityRAT, you say, okay, I would like to test the following requirements. Some kind of HTTP request is generated to the SecurityRAT, and SecurityRAT is the response saying, okay, I think it's done, or I don't think you did well. We also went a bit further, because usually if you have a look at your requirements, what you will find out that some of them are the best to check via black box scan. Some of them, for instance, rather check out the code from Git or whatever you're using, look for some queries in the code and then give the results. So basically what we implemented was a couple of microservices where every microservice is talking to using different tool to perform the checks. Sometimes we have even also our own checks. Those are typically the ones we have, for instance, certain TLS standards. So in order to check whether this TLS standard is met, this is something one-on-one specific. So we just created, for instance, Python scripts for that. In other cases, we also use open source tools for them, which are also configurable. So for instance, we also use OWASP ZEP. You can integrate what you like. And then these tools either go to the QA instance, for instance, of the app, to the Git repository, and we also support SonarQube. So this is how this works. In order to give you an impression, what is important to say, we didn't open source the exact thing we are running in our company. The reason for that is not that we would not like to, but the reason is that it doesn't really make sense, because every company has its own set of requirements. Nevertheless, what we did open source is, let's say, proof of concept, which tests like just 3 requirements where you can get a feeling how it works and which you can extend according to your need, your requirements. So in order to show that, it's fine. So I will just create without any parameters, so now it won't do any filtering. And we have a concept of tags in the tool. So sometimes if some team has certain gates, they want to know which requirements should they decide to certain gates. Sometimes the requirements have different owners typically, so this is also something what you can configure, and here we can mark the requirements which are testable. So here we have 3 requirements which we are able to test in an automated way. And here, now I will test some random application. So because what do we like to show, for instance, we implement some quick checks for security headers. So let's test the securityheaders.com website, which tells you how good you are with security headers, how they implement security headers themselves. And I don't think it's running, René. Ah, it is. Oh. See anything, I'm sorry. So now what it does is test. It comes with results. I don't know if you can see much, so I will just zoom in.
Please zoom in. Yeah, thanks.
So here, what you see are the 3 requirements we've been testing. And what we see is first the result, so whether SecurityRAT thinks it's fulfilled or not. And second is confidence level. This is very important because certain requirements are trivially testable in an automated way, for instance like TLS policy or presence of a certain security header. Some get difficult. Cross-site sifting, SQL injection, you only reach certain confidence using automated testing. Some are basically impossible to test when you are talking about things like business logic limits and similar. So typically I would also say that you will end up in a situation where you are able to test maybe half of your requirements, but not more. But still, it helps the teams to get impression. And what we also typically offer is some message why we think that it's fulfilled or why it's not. So for instance here, if it's about HSDS header, so it tells you the response and what's the setting of that header. Typically what we do is that we also combine the particular microservices for the test. So if we, for instance, talk about cross-site scripting, so we run a René test, we run set test, and we look at SonarQube, for instance, in the code, and then we give a compilation. And for instance, if more tools says everything is okay, one tool gives, let's say, a red flag, then it's, the developer also knows or thinks, okay, this might be probably false positive. If more tools give you, more tools give you the information, there is XSS, then it's the probability is less. Also, typically, if you start implementing some open source tools, these tests run quite a while. So that's why also we included in the definition a REST API, where you can basically see all the tests and you can call it like even like days after. Also to be, in order to be implemented, be able to include this in your CI pipeline, for instance. Okay, there was one thing. Second thing we were struggling with is that usually if people, if the devs are not very experienced with security, then you give them the requirement, but they don't really understand it. So you need to have kind of training program which explains interpolation works like this. You can use the following libraries. This is the reason why you should include those, etc. And as I said before, given that the security requirements are changing all the time, especially things like browser headers, that every now and then there are new ones or new settings, etc. So this means that if you update the requirement, you as a security team are not supposed to only update the requirement in SecurityRAT, but also the PowerPoint. And given the usually constant pressure, you say, okay, you will update the SecurityRAT because that's the thing which is urgent, but the PowerPoint you will do at some point, maybe have a free day or something like that. What happens in the end that you will end up with current set of requirements, but with PowerPoint which is like 2 years old, and which does not reflect the reality. So we thought, okay, how would it be if we were able to generate the slides and maybe to edit them a bit. And we came up again with a new thesis project. And how this works is that here you have the trainings, so here are some previous demos. I will create a test, whatever. See, now you can decide, do you want to have a general training where you present everything, or do you want to present certain subset, for instance, for mobile apps or whatever. So here I will just simply leave everything. Now it asks you which kind of information would you like to add. So again, here we have more information, which we also have, for instance, is a column for motivation. So why are you supposed to include a requirement? For also, what you're bringing around was a test case, so how you can test manually for that requirement, so you can decide which kind of information you would like to include in your training slides. And now it will generate the HTML5 slides with some predefined structure. And now, so you have here the particular categories from SVS, and for every requirement you have the skeleton and more information, the things I've added in the previous step, nevertheless usually this is not enough. You want to add things like pictures, like content. So using, for instance, Markdown or HTML, you can create slides or you can predefine templates. What's quite good things about the HTML slides and IT trainings, that a lot of things come for free there. So for instance, things like if you want to show some code, so it gives you some syntax highlighting for free, which is a very difficult thing to achieve in a PowerPoint. Or for instance, you want to show some demo so that the things don't keep failing. Like in demo, you can, for instance, create a video, put it on YouTube, and you're done. So here, you save it, and if I found it, now you can start, and basically your slides are now done. And here I have the name of the training, some predefined structure, which you can also adapt to the first requirement, with the code, with the YouTube video, whatever you like. So this also helps. Now you basically don't have to take care of updating the slides every time when you update the requirements, unless you want to add things like demos, pictures, etc. And last thing we started playing around a lot are metrics, which is the thing typically management is interested in a lot. So for instance, things like how are particular teams doing. The teams are also supposed to maybe to continuously update the requirements in an incremental process. So if they develop some feature and they are not fulfilling some requirements anymore, then they are supposed to update that information in a SecurityRAT, so this always stays up to date. So now you can see, okay, here for instance 3 levels of criticality, and you see that the low artifacts are quite new, the definitions, the medium are already like almost 200 days, high are also lower, so maybe now you know how to act. Again, you can parse the YAML files and you can see, for instance, which requirements get most often refused, because there might be some action needed from the central security team. You can also compare, okay, which security team fulfill or refuse the most requirements, and do some metrics. And now I would hand again to René. So this was what were kind of the news, and René will talk about our next steps.
Okay, thank you. So I will show the work in progress. No worries, we are done in 5 minutes, so the beer is very near now. I will show you what we are currently also doing in the background of SecurityRAT. So first of all, what we want to achieve is we want to deploy a cloud, basically a demo application of SecurityRAT in the cloud, because at the moment we have to go to our GitHub repo, either manually deploy it, which is not an easy task, I have to say, or you can use a Docker Compose, what we provide, which is very easy to deploy. But nevertheless, what we want to achieve is some kind of running some demo application constantly in the cloud, so everybody can play with the tool. We just want to have a look at it, if it's good for him or not. So this is something we're currently working on. The biggest project we're currently facing in the background is we are planning SecurityRAT version 2. And what we do with version 2, we'll throw away the whole core of version 1 and we rewrite everything. So why? For us it's also a learning platform, SecurityRAT. We want to also face the obstacles the developers face. So this is also one of the decisions why we say, okay, we are going with a microservice-based architecture in version 2. So instead of having a monolith, we will now have microservices for each different feature. First of all, we have case management, which is basically the artifacts you have seen, and derived from that, we will have requirements management. That will also give you the possibility, instead of having like what we see here in the demo I've showed, you can now have several requirement sets. So instead of having like here only OWASP ASVS, you can have OWASP ASVS, your business requirements, some kind of security standards. So you can have a lot of different security requirements or even no security requirement sets inside one database. And you can select per case what kind of requirements do you want to use. Do you want to use ASVS? Do you want to use your GDPR compliance requirements? Whatever you can think of. And we have for each feature, we have microservices. For example, the training feature Daniel has showed you. And for the test management, which is SecurityRAT, is also going to be a microservice. And this architecture will also help if you want to deploy or want to develop new features for SecurityRAT. You do not have to read our code, which is sometimes kind of ugly, of course. You just can create your own microservice with your own feature and adapt it to the gateway. So it makes it for us more manageable of the code and easier to integrate new features into the tool. So this is something which is kind of, we have to do a lot of work currently in the background to achieve this. Hopefully in the next couple of months we will be able to release an MVP for version 2. And we will have modular requirements. What you can currently do in version 1, you can enhance your requirements with, let's say, language-specific to-dos. For example, you can say, show me for this requirement, or you should do it in Java. This is again what we've seen before, injections. We also recommend to use prepared statements, by the way. So now, at the moment, you can only use it if you see a requirement set. In version 2, you will have some kind of wizard-like creation of a case. So you can define, saying, like what you see, your parameter, like it's a web application, it's externally hosted, and in what language is it written. Or language, you can change it to whatever you can think. And it will automatically create the requirements directly attached with, because it knows it's Java specifically. So this is also something we're working on. And of course something we have a lot of import of requirement sets. So at the moment there is no generic importer for the requirements. You have to do it manually in the CRUD interface of SecurityRAT, which is kind of time consuming. So at least for the ASVS standard, when I integrated it with SecurityRAT, I think it took me at least 4 hours to do that. And a lot of people approached us and said, hey look, we have our security requirements in Excel lists. Can't be imported. So this is also something we want to achieve with version 2. We have some kind of generic requirement set directly instead of doing everything manually. We want to have a little bit more integration. What we showed you today is integration with Jira, but there are other ticket tracker outside in this world which are people using, for example, Bacilla. We also want to use a little bit of Git integration to grab some information about the application from Git, maybe doing some kind of automated code tests as well. Yeah, and I think that's the roadmap, what we're currently doing. I hope you enjoyed the talk. We would love to see some contribution, of course. Nevertheless, thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, do we have time for questions now?
Yeah.
Because I think we on the time.
Any plans to integrate with TFS?
Which one?
TFS.
TFS.
Team Foundation Server.
Team Foundation Server from Microsoft. I think I would think the Team Foundation Server isn't using also Git in the background. Is it also using Git in the background?
They can use Git.
They can use Git.
It has its own as well.
I'm not so familiar with Team Foundation Server. I just saw it once and I thought it's using Git, but if it's open source and it's not open source, but if they have an API where we can talk to, it's very easy to integrate it. Because in version 2 we will have some kind of generic integrator service, which has a documented API. So to develop a custom integration is pretty easy. If there's an API you can talk to, of course.
be honest. Usually we develop features which we need, because also the company is kind of sponsoring the project, so we offer it for everyone. What we would like to have is making development of custom modules easier. That's why the microservice, that's why different like change of some paradigms we have. Usually we don't develop things which we don't need ourselves, to be honest, because we have like too many ideas for features and too little time. Okay.
So, how do you usually use it? Do you find that you use it mostly for projects that you develop from scratch, or does it apply to any feature? Like if a developer creates a change to the search functionality of application, would they iterate through all the requirements, or use launching a new application, a new service, or creating a new mobile application? Then that's the list of requirements they have and create JIRAs.
Yeah.
So how?
I think
we have different companies with different approaches. Shall I start?
Yeah.
So for us, we usually use it with new developments. For Delta, we have used it. It's possible, but as you said, they're going to face the whole list from start. If they're just doing a Delta development, and we had this development before in our queue, so they're kind of, do we really, for one line of code, now have to go through 59 requirements? So this is something which is not an easy task to tackle. We can get them involved when they see the value out of it in the end. When we say, okay, this is an initial thing to do, but if you further develop the tool, you only will have to do the Delta requirements. Because if they, for example, say they raise the criticality, what you can do with an artifact, as you have seen in my demo, I've used level 1. And every time you can say change settings, I now want to have level 2. Then you can see which requirements were added to the requirements set. So you see the new requirements. You do not have to create the whole thing again. You can change directly the parameters in every artifact. So we see this is some kind of use case we see a lot. So because usually when teams approach us, they will start with a low criticality, of course. They will tell it's a POC, it's not going to be live, facts. So this is why we start with level 1, and then we go for level 2, and we will just tell them, here are the data requirements, and we'll look at it. So this is usually how it works for us.
What we do, or the philosophy in our company as the sheet, is kind of, you could also have some kind of promise of the dev team to the security team and to the management. And so that's why the artifact approach and not the, let's say, ticket approach or project approach or sprint approach or whichever. So, and then basically what we see is every team having its own methodology how to achieve those. So example could be that, for instance, in Scrum they have the refinement meeting, so they see, okay, this ticket for this we need to respect the following 4 requirements. We said that these are included, so implementation, escaping, and so on. So we just developing a feature, but the feature doesn't change anything on the compliance, let's say, to the requirements. So that's the thing we see most often. Some teams even have in their Jira tickets what they did was that they talk to the API and they generate, let's say, the Jira markdown table with the ticks and crosses, and their definition of done is that everything what's tick has to be fulfilled and present checked by the QA team. But that's why sometimes you have tickets, sometimes you don't have even anything, sometimes you have Scrum. So that's why the artifacts level and not the project, sprint, whatever, because the artifact is what matters. And what we saw before is that a lot of critical vulnerabilities are added in the smallest things where just one line of code is quickly changed or something and the secret is forgotten. So, does it answer?
Absolutely, yes, thank you.
Are you planning to add some more generic cases, like for example GDPR? Because people are freaking out in North America, so that would really help.
Again, not ourselves. Contributions are welcome. Basically, as I said before, we are focusing on giving the framework and not the particle requirement sets. Because also for us, like we started with ASVS maybe like 5 years back, but we keep evolving it, and meanwhile we have something completely different to SVS. And this is also something what I think you usually have in bigger companies, that they basically derive their requirements from all the legislation they have. So basically every company has a different set.